Update. Am I the a-hole for refusing to cook for my stepchildren anymore? Original post. They are 16 female and 15 male. My husband and I have been married for 8 years. They have been living with their mom for a month because we caught the virus. Fortunately, they were with their mom and didn't catch it. Normally, we split custody. Ever since they have returned home, they have been very critical of my cooking. My husband and I usually split chores. He makes the dinner and I make breakfast and lunch. This works for us as my work starts later in the morning while his shift ends earlier in the evening. I try to make them healthy food and spend time with them, but they have been nothing but critical. They make faces, make fun of the dishes I cooked, and compare them to their mom's cooking in a manner which is really hurtful. They have been talked to, and their father has even punished them. They just don't seem to care. My husband seems to think my cooking is fine. Hell, they don't seem to mind my cooking when he heated it up last week. So I stopped cooking for them. They know how to cook. I had taught both of them how to handle themselves around a kitchen last year, and they had no problems before this. I am worried that they are lashing out over something hurtful I did. Teenagers are not known for their emotional maturity, and I fear this will further alienate them. But at the same time, my mental health has improved, and I do not dread mornings anymore. I still make them lunch, but I don't have to hear them talk smack about my cooking due to my schedule. My husband wants me to be the adult here, and I promise to deal with them. He thinks that if I start cooking again, they will calm down. My bonus children are giving me the cold shoulder, and it hurts. But I want to teach them that they have to respect the people in their lives, even if they dislike them. They talked to their mom about it, and she ranted at me and called me names. My husband is making them breakfast now, and they don't seem to mind that change. I had made my peace with them not considering me family. I don't expect them to make me a Mother's Day card or call me mom. I never expected that. That would be amazing, but I know it is not going to happen. I am okay with that. However, I just want them to treat me with respect. Understand that I am an adult in their lives who cares for them and loves them, but they treat me like a servant who also pays for stuff. Now for the top comments. They talked to their mom about it and she ranted at me and called me names. This is why they're treating you poorly. Your husband needs to have a sit down with his ex about bad-mouthing you to the kids. In my humble opinion, you're doing the correct thing. These are not young children. They are teenagers and they damn sure know what they are doing. You don't need to put up with this treatment just because they're kids. They're rude and their words and actions affect other people. This, especially suspicious since things seem to have started up after they spent some time at their mom's. Makes me wonder what might have been said while they were over there, especially since if I'm reading your post correctly, everything seemed fine for 8 years. I doubt their mom was pulling out a full 4-course breakfast for them every day, and even if she was, they can't realistically expect someone else to do the same. So someone's up. Not Dayhall. You said they know how to cook, and if all else fails, they can always go for cereal or a sandwich. They won't starve, and you shouldn't have to put up with their criticism. Oh my god. They're 15 and 16 and someone else cooks them breakfast and makes their lunches? You and your husband are teaching them to remain children instead of becoming adults. It's great that you taught them their way around a kitchen, and no one should be making them breakfast except themselves, especially with their entitled attitude. They're acting like toddlers and your husband is enabling them. You are not the a-hole for setting and maintaining healthy boundaries. Yeah, I was making my own breakfast from a much younger age. I just leave out cereal, milk, and bread for them. I'm worried they are lashing out over something hurtful I did. What did you do that was hurtful? Also, what's wrong with 2 teenagers making their own toast or cereal and fruit in the morning? I was living out of home already by their ages and made my own damn food 3 times a day. But even at say 12 to 13, I made my own breakfast and school lunch, and the parental figures would only ever make dinner. They're not young children. They're fully capable of making their own breakfast and lunch. I'm not voting on your a-hole rating until you answer my question about what you think they may be retaliating over. I have been racking my brains thinking about something I did which would cause this reaction. I can't think of anything. That worries me even more for some reason. Am I being too oblivious to what I did? And now for the update. I made my post I think 2 weeks ago and a lot has happened. I realized that I was not an a-hole for not cooking for them. I continued to not cook for them and they continued to ignore me. It was hurtful, but I was getting used to it. I talked to my husband about enforcing rules and talking to their mother to ensure that we can solve this issue, but he is reluctant to start drama because he is afraid of going back to the court and having to change the custody agreement. However, all this took a backseat. My father received a very bad diagnosis. It is pretty bad. It sent me to a very bad place and I was just getting by on autopilot for a week. My stepdaughter walked in on me crying in my room. I think she was looking for her dad. She sat next to me and apologized. She teared up a little and told me that she's scared that I will force Dad to move them permanently to their mothers. That made me cry harder. I told her that even though we may not get on all the time, I always missed them when they were at their mothers and house would feel empty without them here. After this conversation, things are better now. I won't say we are doing fine all the time, but we are doing much better than before. The people who guessed that their mother put them to it were correct. After a bit more talking to my stepchildren, I realized what that something we did that really hurt them. My stepdaughter told me that we didn't call them when we were sick with the virus. But we did. In fact, we were frustrated that they didn't pick up. But we chalked it up to their mother's very strict screen time policy, where the phones are under her care and not with them, and them being busy with classes. We just resorted to texting them. My hypothesis is that their mother knew the passcodes and she was deleting our missed calls when the phone was with her, and then using our lack of calls to drive a wedge between us. I have not told anyone about this theory, but this seems like a good theory. I have let this thing slide for now as I'm more focused on helping my father with his treatment. I really want to thank everyone who commented. I know this is not a happy update, but I want to let people know what happened. Opie, talk to your husband first. But I have an idea. Show your kids your call records and texts you sent when they were at their mom's. They're teens. They're tech savvy enough to understand timestamps and deletions. Tell them you're concerned they didn't get any calls or messages, because you want to make sure they have reliable communication with you and their dad. If your theory is true, the kids will put 2 and 2 together and understand who's really the problem. If that's the case, it may be worth talking to a lawyer and revisiting custody. Besides the whole parental alienation thing, interfering with communication with the custodial parent is dangerous and not in the best interest of the kids. I'm sorry to hear about your dad. I hope you're able to spend as much time with him and the kids as possible. This is a really good idea. Opie, I understand you don't want to add any fuel to the drama and your husband's worries, but I think the kids do need to understand what their mother is capable of. I'm sorry about your dad, Opie. I hope it gets better for you both. And it really is a safety issue with emergency communications. What if Dad got into a car accident and the kids needed to come to the hospital? Would the mom just decline calls? What if one of the kids forgot medication at the house? It's not just douchey, it's dangerous. Wow, I'm so sorry for you and your dad, but happy you seem to be on track with the stepkids. Their mother seems to be playing quite a role in this. It's really screwed up. I get so depressed when I read about all the horrible parents out there who use their kids as a weapon. Show stepdaughter the missed calls and messages from your phones. That should convince her that both of you did try to contact them. And contact a lawyer and take X back to court. This is straight up parental alienation. Now for the next story. Am I the a-hole for not wanting to be part of my stepfamily's business? So my mom married my stepdad when I was 12. Both had kids. Mom had me, 25 female, and my siblings, 20 female, 19 male, 18 female, and my stepdad has his 3, 18 female, 16 male, 16 female. We lost our dad a year before. Stepdad lost his first wife 3 years before. As the oldest, I blended less well than the others. I'm fine with everyone. I get along with everyone, and I have no problems. But I don't love them. I don't consider my stepdad my dad or even as much as a parental figure as they would like. My step-siblings don't feel the same as my siblings. It's not really a big deal. I can treat them all the same and fake a bond and stuff that I don't feel, and I have no issues with any of them like I said. But I do have some boundaries. Like I kept my last name when my siblings changed theirs. And for Father's Day, my card was always separate from the main one because I was not okay getting him a dad/father Father's Day card. It had to be stepdad. Now, my mom and stepdad want to open up a family restaurant, and my siblings and step-siblings all want to be involved. And I don't. I expressed this to them as not my thing, but my mom knew I was saying no in part because of how I feel. And she told me it was making it very obvious because I have been involved in my paternal family business since high school, and that it looks like an out rejection. I told her the simple fact is, I'm not interested. And they have a lot of people already involved, so it's not like it's a big deal. She told me I'm making myself look like the red-haired stepchild, and I told her that I am a stepchild. I have a step-parent. That's not a bad thing, and it's not something I'm ashamed of. She told me I didn't have to be a stepchild. I could have had another dad. I told her I could have, but I didn't want that. She told me the family business wants and needs me. I asked her, since pictures of the grandparents and deceased relatives are going up on the walls in this idea, would the deceased parents be going up there too? And there was silence. My brother told me they're sad I don't want to be part of it, and it would be such a cool family thing to have. And now my mom's words are stuck in my head. Am I the a-hole? Now for the comments. Not the a-hole. Seriously? Stay away. If you don't want to be part of it, stay away from it. The restaurant business has a level of volatility that's unlike any other industry. It tears families apart. Starting a restaurant and making a profit from it is very difficult and easily failed. Rent is expensive and overheads are high. I can write a whole essay as to why family restaurants can fail. The hours are long, the work is not fun, and everyone is exhausted at the end of the night. Most restaurants fail in the first few years because it's so difficult. Stick to your decision, Opie. Use any excuse you can, but steer clear of this mess. Not day hall. Not day hall. How many family businesses does she think you need to be a part of? And if you've had boundaries since you were 12 about how blended you wanted to be, why is she still harping on this 13 years after the fact? I think she thought I would feel like the odd one out, or like I was missing out on something. But I have never felt that way, and I know that bothers her because she wants me to be a part of it. Clearly not the a-hole. You feel what you feel or even not. It is your choice. If it doesn't feel right to participate, then don't participate. It is only up to you. You don't need to do things just to make others feel better. Do what is good for you. Not the a-hole. It would be counterproductive to put someone who's not passionate about the business responsible for said business anyways. You have your own goals and aspirations that you want to do and should not be chained to a career your family made. Last story is titled, Am I the a-hole for throwing my sister-in-law and her kids out after calling her a bad person because she called me a bad mom? My 33 female husband's 33 male oldest sister Rachel, 41 female, loves to stop by so her kids can spend time with mine. Rachel can be annoying. But she and my husband have a good relationship, and I always wanted to cultivate healthy relationships between everyone. But last weekend, I hit a breaking point and caused some added damage than was already done. Potentially. So, my youngest is 6, and he has sensory issues. He has many issues with clothes. Can't wear certain fabrics, can't stand socks, even needs special underwear and would go around naked if he could. Sister-in-law has always been into knitting sweaters and gives them as gifts. She has also gifted clothes to the kids before. We explained many times about our son, and my husband has said while we appreciate the gifts, he can't wear them without being driven crazy. So she was looking through some photos while she was here last weekend. My husband was working, and she commented that none of the holidays pictures had him in the sweater, and that he never wears the clothes she buys. I was a little frustrated by trying to explain it as easily as I could. She then told me she had something for him, pulls out a pair of space socks and says they would be perfect for him and his interest in space. I told her he couldn't wear them and they drive him crazy. She told me we cater too much to him, that he should be made wear what people buy'd make for him, and I'm not being a good parent letting him go through life rejecting clothes. I lost it. I told her that if I'm a bad mother, then she's a crappy person for judging me when all I'm doing is my best, and for pushing constantly to get her way. I told her we had explained things as clearly as we possibly could, and we have been over this for over 3 years now, and she's still not willing to open her mind to the possibility that we're all just doing our best. She told me good parents help their kids be better than rejecting stuff. And I told her to take her kids and leave because she was not welcome in my home anymore. My husband was pissed at her sister when he heard what went down. And he heard on his lunch break because she sent him 30 messages and left 3 voicemails on his phone. The rest of the family say I should have not treated her like that in front of the kids. And kicking the kids out was wrong. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. Thanks for standing up for your kids' sensory issues. I didn't have that growing up and I can still feel awful tights in my legs, scratchy dresses, non-stretch pants. I'm 35 and I buy my favorite clothes in multiples because they feel good. You can tell your sister-in-law to go to hell. Enforcing people with sensory issues go wear certain clothes is a special kind of hell in itself. You would think she would take the hint after 3 years of explaining it to her in plain English that the son cannot wear her gifts. Enough is enough. She showed absolutely no consideration for the son's sensory issues. And the nerve of her of pushing her ideology of what constitutes a bad parent just because you allow him to wear what is most comfortable. She can take her snarky butt and her unwanted gifts back with her. Not the hall. Isn't it funny that the people who pester you over and over again are always the same people who are shocked to pick at your face when you hit your limit and go off? And somehow always blame you for it. I was only trying to help you. You did not have to lash out for such a small thing. You're too sensitive. How they managed to paint the picture in their mind as them being the victim of this situation appalls me. Not the a-hole. She's the a-hole. Buying gifts you don't want and wanting to force your child to wear them. If she's so positive about wanting the kid to wear it, why not ask you which fabrics she should buy? She's mad because her opinion is not winning an issue that is not about her. Good riddance, in my opinion. Not the a-hole. After being told on previous occasions of your child's sensory issues, it seems a bit disrespectful of her to ignore said issues to continue gifting clothing that your son can't wear. She especially has no right to get angry, invalidate your son's sensory issues, and call you a bad parent for being understanding and accommodating to him. Am I the a-hole for convincing my grandpa to kick out my aunt and refusing to help him change his mind back? I'm 19 male, so when it comes to family disputes, my opinions are usually brushed off in a let the adults handle this type of way. But for the first time, someone older than me took my advice. My grandfather and I are great friends. I'm closer to him than to anyone else in my family, but that's not to say I'm not close with my parents and siblings. Grandpa and I just kind of vibe. That's why he listens to what I say more than anyone in my family would expect him to. He took me out to lunch last week, as a grandfather does with his favorite grandchild, half joking. And he was ranting about his witch of a daughter and each of the epic fights they got into this past month. My aunt really is horrible. Trying to explain her whole dynamic would put me well over the 3,000 character limit. To give you an idea, 2 months ago at my sister's birthday dinner, she screamed at my dad to screw himself and waved a steak knife around. This was a nice restaurant where she was eating for free. There's also that time when my mom was pregnant with me and my eloquent aunt said, "I hope you freaking miscarry that turd in your C-word." I don't really know what else to say. This woman is mean. Anyways, talking with my mouth full of cheeseburger, I asked my grandpa, why haven't you kicked her out or at least started charging rent? He thought and said, "Yeah, my 54-year-old daughter can throw me a few hundred per month to live in my house." We laughed because my aunt is not a very agreeable person, and that conversation going down would be an event worth witnessing. We discussed and I convinced him to demand rent, and if she refused, to give her the boot. I wasn't present for the argument itself, but it went down as we expected. It was so bad that the neighbors called the cops. Only the 3rd time that has happened. Anyways, most of my family is mad that I inserted myself into the situation. They see me as a little boy still whose opinion is irrelevant. Maybe they're right. I'm 19 and everyone else is 40 to 80. But I don't like watching my grandparents go through hell living with her, so I said what I said. But crap has hit the fan and now the entire family is divided. My grandpa has no intention of letting her back in, but my grandma wants him to. My mom is glad she's gone. Wonder why, right? And my dad doesn't like his sister very much, but he's worried all this drama will bite our family in the butt. There have been consequences. In-laws have revoked Christmas vacations that hadn't even been sent out yet, so we've pulled their Thanksgiving invitations. You get the gist. It's a whole mess. Now, people think if I talk to my grandpa, I can convince him to let her back in. They're probably right. I feel like I do have that influence. But so far, I've refused, because my grandpa's never been happier, and my grandma's starting to come around. Outside opinions, please. Now for the top comments. Not Day Hall. Dude, she's 54. Why the heck is she living with her parents? She's definitely jealous of your mom and probably has nothing better to do than stir up drama. You said what everyone was thinking, so don't feel bad about it. Oh yes, she's jealous. She's more jealous of my dad because he's her 6 years younger brother who's extremely successful and has a family of his own, while she slaves away at a job she hates. He has everything she can't have, and she's pissed about it. That being said, even my dad tolerates her for the sake of the family. The fact that her own brother and my father wants her back in their house is really what's making me question what's good for the whole family. Your father's advocating she go back to Grandpa, but I don't see him offering to take her in. It's funny that so many people seem to think you had no right to involve yourself in something that's not your business, while simultaneously doing the same. The only two people whose opinion matters here is Grandpa and Grandma. Grandpa's clearly got his mind made up, and it sounds like Grandma's starting to enjoy the fact that she's gone too. Not Dayhole. You aren't a hypnotist, and your grandpa's all his mental faculties. You didn't make him do anything. You can't make him do it. Why does this awful woman have control over half the family? She's actually nice to most of my extended family. Her rage really shines only in her immediate family. Somehow, over the years, she has befriended everyone who doesn't share her blood. At age 54, after decades of not paying rent for her entire adult life because she lived with her parents, that aunt should have quite a lot in savings. What strikes me about the story is how your grandparents might be vulnerable to elder abuse. Not saying that's what was happening, but it certainly sounds like she was taking advantage of them. Not today how if your grandparents are happier. It was their decision. The flying monkeys should butt out. She mistreats the hell out of them, but they fight back too. Both my grandma and grandpa grew up with very few families, so they have come to put family before everything, even when it defies all logic. It's taken a lot to get to this point, believe me. Now for the next story. Am I the a-hole for making my parents leave my house? I, 43 male, was finally able to purchase a neat 3 bedrooms, 2 baths house under my name for about 3 years now. Thankful for their support in order for me to live my best life, I agreed to let my parents move in with me after they decided to sell the smaller mobile home we previously lived in. However, one of the main boundaries I've set with them is that I did not want my sister, 40 female, Mackenzie, to enter my home. She and I had problems solving our fights and arguments growing up, which led to resentment, and we ultimately stopped speaking to each other by the time I graduate high school. I've tried to bury the hatchet numerous times in between, hoping that we could reach an understanding and get back in neutral terms, but Mackenzie never bothered to respond. So I left it at that. It minimized contact as well. If my parents wanted to see her, they would have to drive up to visit her themselves. I would drive them up there, or at the very least, they'd tell her to drop anything off in the driveway for them to pick up. But the biggest rule set was that she would not step into my house no matter what. By extension, this resulted in a distant relationship with my nephews/niece and brother-in-law, but I tried to be respectful when I happened to see them. Now, almost every other weekend, after policies lighten up and getting our vaccinations, I meet up with several of my long-term high school buddies and stay over at one of their places. Later that same evening I left, I realized I forgot to bring over some new wine that I bought for us all to share. And since we all lived a moderate distance from each other, I figured a 15-minute drive wouldn't kill me. But to my surprise, there's an extra car in my driveway. I recognized the license plate, and my heart dropped. I stormed into the house, and lo and behold, Mackenzie was here, and her children were playing with my dogs in the backyard. I was furious, and demanded my parents to explain why they allowed my sister to be inside. They reasoned that she was only in the dining room and wasn't doing anything wrong. I told Mackenzie to take her kids and leave, but not before she scoffed and called me a pathetic and selfish loner. My parents were mad at me for forcing Mackenzie to leave, but I argued that they broke the only single, most important boundary asked of them. They said I was overreacting and that my house was also their shared space. They even said we were all still family, but I disagreed strongly with that statement because Mackenzie and I never solved our estranged relationship. I asked them if they had done this behind my back the times when I wasn't home, and they admitted to doing so. I felt overwhelmed and told them they were going to stay at Mackenzie's place for an indefinite amount of time. They apologized and told me to just get over it, but I refused. So they packed several of their belongings and I drove them up to my sister's house while getting an earful on the entire way there. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. You are justified in having this boundary, and it's your house. If they wanted to see your sister, they could either have objected when you made the boundary, rather than sneaking behind your back, or just not move in with you. If the parents believed the rule was inconsequential and unimportant, they wouldn't have sneaked. In my opinion, this demonstrates they did it knowing full well it was wrong and knowing it broke a boundary. Not the a-hole at all. Not the a-hole. You might have to change your locks. Somehow your parents equated moving in with "we live here now, so it's our house too, so we can do what we want." That's not how it works. They apologized and told me to just get over it. Haha, that's not what an apology is. They're disrespectful. Not the a-hole. My house, my rules. If I let you live in my house, you do not have to like my rules. But you will comply with them or you won't live there anymore. You made one rule. They ignored it. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Not the a-hole. Next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my brother and his fiancée no? I recently moved in with my brother and his fiancée, trying to get my life back on track, and they gave me a place to stay because I was in a new city with no money. Since then, I've bounced around a couple of jobs, and that has made paying bills a little difficult. But I managed to do so by getting a small loan from my mother. The job hunt was as much physical as it was digital. I was in several job finding sites all day putting in applications. When I wasn't on my phone, I was riding my bike for several miles around town putting in applications. When I got a job finally, I began work right away and worked as much as possible. The job pays weekly and rent was due soon. I communicated with my brother that I didn't know how much my check would be, and that I didn't know if it would be enough to cover my portion of the bills. Surprise, it wasn't. Thankfully, my mother lent me the rest of my rent. I make sure to let everyone in the house understand my situation. Fast forward 2 weeks and fiancé tells me there is an additional $700 charge added to rent and I have to pay 1/3 of it. After a couple questions, she explains to me that it's because their dogs have done severe damage to the house/yard, and the landlord wants a new security deposit. A day later, I was mulling that over in my head and decided it was not fair for me to pay for the damages caused by their dogs. The damage was done prior to me living there and was caused by their pets. Heavily damaged doors and frames chewed up, blinds chewed to bits, the stench of the dog waste throughout the house, and a yard that had been ripped up. As I explained to them that I think it's unfair, then it happens. Fiancé tells me it doesn't matter. I live in her house and have to pay for the damages her dogs caused, and my brother won't even acknowledge me. I firmly state that I disagree, and that I won't be paying. She smiles and says, "You can't even pay rent. You get mommy to pay it for you. Pay me or I'll kick you out." I retort, "Yes, I'm in debt to her, not you. Go ahead and kick me out." Cast a glance to my brother who is just sitting and staring at me without a word to say. She says, "Okay, you're out." Am I the a-hole for not agreeing to pay for damages? Now for the comments. Not the a-hole. The dog's damage has nothing to do with you. Unfortunately, it sounds like you will need to find a new place to live, but hopefully you won't have to deal with such nonsense and passive-aggressive behavior. You've done nothing wrong. Not only is it not Opie's problem, but it sounds like Opie's paying rent to live in a dump. Even the landlord is trying to be proactive about the obvious damage in his building. I wouldn't be surprised if his rent payment was inflated too. If they're comfortable being that blatant and taking advantage of him, what's to stop them from telling him that his share of bills is $100 or $200 higher than it actually should be? Not the a-hole. They were basically trying to use you to pay for their screw-ups. Also, I don't know your relationship with your mother, But when you're stable in your finances, I'd go pretty big for her next birthday/Mother's Day. She sounds like a very reliable person. She's a great mom and a great friend. Love her to the moon and back, and I do as much for her as I can. Not day home. You shouldn't have to pay that. You're only renting the space where you sleep pretty much, right? Not the entire apartment. That is not your responsibility. The fiancé is just being a witch. But the problem is that now they're kicking you out. Either find your own place or go with your mom. Last story is titled, Am I the a-hole for cutting off my housemate's internet when he refused to pay for it? I've 25 male been living with my housemate 24 male for a little over a year now, and I've known him since college. We pay our rent separately to our landlord, and this place is great. Like, the only monthly expenses other than the rent is a cell phone bill, internet bill, and of course food, as the electricity and water are covered by the landlord. I don't know how or why, but I'm not complaining. He is a pretty chill landlord. He's retired, and I get the sense that he just doesn't care anymore. My housemates and I agreed to split the cost of the internet bill, so we pay roughly $50 each. Or at least it should be that way. But a couple of months back, he decided he didn't want to pay his share of the internet, because I actually pay less than him in rent. Again, I don't know why, but I pay about $40 less than him. It's been an ongoing issue, but I'm not okay with him just not paying his share of the internet, especially for such a flimsy reason. The other day, I asked him again for the total amount he owed, which by this time was $150, and he told me to buzz off. I'm tired of you constantly nagging me. You save a ton with rent. Can't you help me out a little? $40 in rent difference, and this shoved a stick so far up his butt he doesn't want to give me my money? Fine. So I said, okay, logged into my router settings, and disconnected all of his devices, and changed the password. I just did not give a crap anymore. He came demanding I turn the internet back on. I told him no, unless he gave me the money owed. He started begging and said he had a meeting today that was really important. So I said, must not be that important if $150 is too much for you to give me for internet. You have your phone, hotspot from that. He left after that. Now there's so much tension in the house. Enough where I can cut it with a knife. Then he went off and complained to mutual friends. And a lot of them took his side in saying that I'm not a good friend, and that I shouldn't be blackmailing him like this. And I told them that I don't give a crap. If he wants to play games for a $40 rent discrepancy, I'm down to play games. And unless he gives me now $200 for messing with me, I'm not letting him use my internet. Now a few took my side saying the dude is a mooch, and was just itching to find any way to save any amount of money. So I'm turning to you all. Am I the a-hole? Sorry for the overall tone of the post, but I'm pissed. Not the a-hole. Seems like he's just used to getting what he wants, and you gave him a wake-up call. Stand your ground and get your money. You're not his parent, you don't have to pay his bills. Especially if you let it add up to this amount without having a talk with you first if you needed help. At first he said, I'll get you the money ASAP, or can you wait until my next pay? To eventually what was described above in the post. And I'm just here, feeling I have egg on my face for letting it go so long. Everyone has their breaking point. This is a classic case of mistaking kindness for weakness, and your roommate is learning that the hard way. Not the a-hole. It gets shut off if he was paying the ISP directly. Just because he's a friend doesn't mean he can play by different rules than everyone else. Yes, but his underlying motivation, after the initial song and dance, for not paying, is because OP pays $40 less in rent, apparently. That analogy doesn't really work. Not the a-hole. Your rent is completely separate from your internet service. He agreed to pay half and hasn't been doing that. Your mistake was in allowing him to go 2 months without paying. If your roommate has a problem with the difference in rental charges, he should take it up with the landlord. Definitely feels like I have egg on my face now for letting 2 months go by. Housemate. I don't want to pay for my share of the internet. OP shuts off his internet access. Housemate. Surprise Pikachu face. Not the a-hole. You got yourself a mooch on your hands, my dude. Rent should be completely separate from shared bills. Also, where do you live? If you're in GTA, I'll be your roommate in a heartbeat if all I had to do was give you $50 and pay rent. Y'all are blessed to find such a place. Am I the a-hole for admitting to not putting as much effort into my mom as my stepmom? I, 30 male, am at a loss here and not sure what to do. When I was 3, my mom, 52 female, married a guy who did not like the fact I wasn't his and didn't want to constantly provide for someone else's kid. The week before the wedding, he gave her an ultimatum, and because he had money, she chose him and opted to just have me on weekends when he wasn't around. My grandparents became my primary caretakers until my dad was able to move back to our country. When I was 6, my dad married my stepmom, 54 female, and I admittedly didn't make things easy for her for a while. I had some abandonment, trust, and mommy issues, and I took it out on her. My stepmom was a very loving and patient person, but made it clear that she wasn't going to take my crap. Eventually, we were able to find a type of relationship that worked for us. When I was about 15, my dad passed away, and I was so lost and hurt. My grandparents offered to take me in, but my stepmom would not hear of it and felt like I needed to stay close to my half-siblings, 8 female and 8 male. She got me therapy and I was able to work through even more of my issues. By the time I graduated high school, I was calling her mom and always grateful for the effort she put into me growing up. 5 years ago, my stepmom was diagnosed with cancer, and I was devastated. Even though the doctor said that they caught it at good time, still I felt like I was going to lose her and took a lesser paying job so that I could move back home and have more free time to care for her. I basically became the man of the house and handled a lot of the finances, took my stepmom to most of her appointments, sat beside her on most of her meetings with the doctor, held her hand when she was suffering through the chemo, and did my best to give my siblings normal of a life as possible. It was a rough time. But she beat cancer, and I'm not ashamed to say I wept tears of joy and made several posts in celebration. I even paid for us all to go on a family vacation. Now, my mom, unfortunately, was diagnosed with cancer a few months ago, and I was sorry to hear about it. I sent her a card and called her to say that I wish her the best, and sent her some information that my stepmom found very helpful. Recently, my cousin called me enraged at the lack of effort that I'm showing my mom compared to what I gave my stepmom, and how she's hurt that her own son doesn't seem to care whether she lives or dies. I honestly didn't think about it very much when it came to my mom. I'm sad for her, but I don't feel like this would wreck my world sad. Am I the a-hole for not caring very much about my mom getting cancer? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. Your mom made her bed. She should lie in it. Well, if it isn't the consequences of my actions. Not a a-hole. You have a close and loving relationship with your stepmom while you don't with your mom. So your feelings about losing your mom aren't as strong. Anyway, it sounds like you lost her. Really, she chose to lose you a long time ago. Your feelings are just fine and normal. What should you do? Well, you could call or visit more often, but keep in mind you might be berated for neglecting your mom, which could open up a whole can of worms about what you did in the past. Not an a-hole. People love to use blood to excuse horrible behavior. You can't hate them, they're your mom. Or, let it go, I mean their family. But never once are these arguments weighing in how we should hold family to a higher standard. You're not getting revenge here, you're returning the same energy. Nothing wrong with that. Ask yourself this. If this was a random friend who treated you this way, would you even consider their feelings? Not an a-hole. Your mom made her choice when she chose her new husband over you. She's hurt that her own son doesn't seem to care whether she lives or dies? Try being discarded by your own mother when you're a kid. Your stepmother actually took on the role of motherhood and was actually there for you, and you returned the favor. Motherhood is a privilege, not a right. Now for the next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my mom she can't see her grandson unless she changes her attitude? My husband, 33, and I, 31, are pregnant with our first child after trying for a year now. We found out that we're having a baby boy, and we're so thrilled. So we decided that we were going to do a small gender reveal party. My mom always wanted a granddaughter, and she even wore all pink to the gender reveal. When the blue confetti came out, everyone cheered. Except for my mom. She decided to leave and go home, so I didn't see her the whole rest of the party. After the party, I decided to get on social media, and the first thing that popped up was a post from my mom saying, "Worst day ever." When someone asked what was going on, She replied, "My daughter is having a boy when I wanted it to be girl, but I guess it's okay." I called my mom, and I told her that unless she changes that attitude, then she can't see her grandson. And she just screamed at me, but I kept it firm. My husband and in-laws agree with me, but other relatives called me an a-hole. So, am I? Not an a-hole. Imagine a grown-up acting like a petulant child who didn't get their own way. I'm sure she'll come around, but be on guard that she doesn't eventually show favoritism to any future granddaughters. You may need to continue to protect your son from this woman. Precisely. OP, it's okay for your mom to be disappointed, but it's not okay for her to complain about it publicly. I've seen a lot of AITA posts about husbands/fathers being disappointed that they are having a girl, or that they have all girls and no boys. And they are roundly and correctly branded as a-holes. Your mom is as well, for the same reason. Hold firm on your boundary. Not a-hole. Not a-hole. Worst day ever? We can all think of worse. Congratulations on your happy news. Incidentally, we just found out this past year that our older child is a daughter, not a son. I always kinda wanted a daughter, not to the point of being disappointed in a son, mind you. And now I have one. Life is weird. Worst day ever is the kind of thing my 5-year-old says when he doesn't get his way. And I don't let him get away with that kind of behavior. I think that Opie's mother can be held to at least the same standard as a 5-year-old, right? Not a-hole. Not a-hole. Your child doesn't need a grandparent treating them like crap because they're not the gender she was wanting them to be. You don't need to support her immature and disgusting reaction. Not a-hole. Any judgments about gender reveal parties aside, your child's gender is not about her. It's not even about you either. Technically speaking, you didn't choose to have a boy. She's practically shaming you for getting pregnant with a child of the wrong gender. Next story is titled, "Am I the a-hole for telling my sister that she's not an adoptive parent?" I, 34 female, have 3 kids. 2 are adopted from China. 3 years ago, we got matched. We decided to announce it to the family at our Christmas party. When we said we're adopting, the first words out of my sister's, now 32 female, mouth were "me too." I was very confused, as she had never seemed interested in adoption. So I asked her what she meant a few minutes later, and she started telling me all about the new corgi she was getting. I was kinda annoyed because I feel like it's weird to compare the adoption of pets to human children, but I let it go at the time. Fast forward about 7 months when we were home with the girls. They were 4 and 7, and the grieving process was very hard, and it was just a difficult adjustment in general. When I tried to call my sister, she kept comparing it to her dog, which she had gotten a few months earlier. Like, I would tell her some things that are triggering to my daughters, and she would say, "Oh yeah, how we had trouble with that on the first few days, but we just kept exposing him to it, and he got used to it. Howie is her dog." First of all, that is terrible advice. And second, she would say it like she was some experienced parents giving advice to a new mother. She has a stepson, but he was 11 when she met him, and 13 when she became a stepmom. She has not adopted him, and her husband choose for her not to be a parental figure for him. So I don't really think it's her place to be giving out parenting advice. Well, the last straw was that I go to a Zoom adoptive parent support group, and yesterday we had an event type thing where you could bring in a friend or someone who may be considering adoption and give them a little insight from the parent's point of view. My sister asked me to invite her as she said she may adopt one day. I did. And when they started talking about how sometimes in orphanages, children's hygiene aren't taken care of, aka they don't have their teeth taken care of, and often wear the same clothes for multiple days in a row, my sister started talking about how it was similar to how her dog was treated in the shelter, and how annoying it was to have to take him to the vet for his teeth because they weren't properly cared for in the shelter. Everyone in the meeting looked very uncomfortable, especially the woman in charge, who is an adoptee. After the meeting, we were talking on the phone, and I tried to tell her nicely that it was an inappropriate thing to say when talking about the inhuman conditions of actual children. But she accused me of not caring about the inhuman conditions of dog shelters. I said, "I do care about that, but it's not the same as children. And adopting a dog from a shelter is not the same as adopting a child, and doesn't make you an adoptive parent." She hung up on me and blocked me on Facebook. Did I say something wrong? Am I the a-hole here? Edit. I did invite her specifically. I reposted the event to my Facebook page and my sister messaged and asked me to invite her. And this was not a conversation type thing. It was a presentation put on by the group leader / agency rep, so I didn't think she would have much time to talk. And also, I thought this would help her learn more about actual adoption and how different it is to animal adoption. Edit 2. I do understand what it's like to have a dog and how they're like a baby in some way. I have 4, but I still would never compare the adoption of my dogs versus the adoption of my daughters. Now for the top comments. Not a hole. You're right. And I speak as someone who adopted animals instead of kids and can't biologically have children. I call my pets my babies, and I have a hardcore bleeding heart for animals that are mistreated or neglected, or in shelters that don't provide what they need. But it's apples and oranges to human adoption. The state of orphanages that neglect their kids can be awful and heartbreaking. I have 2 adopted sisters from Ukraine who came from an orphanage where they were not fed enough and have very little human contact. And it's a completely separate issue. Both are terrible circumstances, and both can manifest really difficult issues once the adoptee finds their new home. But they are not the same issue and can't be compared that way. I agree. The 2 things just aren't comparable. It's like saying comparing apples to oranges. OP, you need to either set boundaries with your sister or get it drilled into her head that it's not the same thing. To be honest, she sounds kind of jealous of you adopting and all of the support and attention she thinks you're getting. She either won't / can't adopt and is trying to earn that attention or make up for it with what she thinks is the next best thing. So either set up some boundaries like shutting her down, establishing what she did in the meeting was not to happen again and was unacceptable, etc. Or just get it bolted to her forehead that an adopted child and adopted dog are not the same. Not a hole. Not a hole. Dogs and cats aren't human children. I'm a bleeding heart tree hugger and wish more people cared about their pets. But it's not the same thing. And it's incredibly insensitive of your sister to not see that line at all. Yeah, it's like a layman saying they are a insert credentialed / licensed professional here instead of a hobbyist, enthusiast, someone knowledgeable, etc. I consider it akin to a homeopath improperly claiming to be an MD, or someone telling an educator with an MA in education they're also a school teacher. Not a-hole, and your sister is delusional. Don't get me wrong, I love my cat, and she's my baby. But I don't go around saying I'm a single parent, WTF. Seriously, your sister is badass crazy. Now for the last story. Am I a hole for staying quiet when my stepmom tells my stepsister I chose them? So my dad married Jane 7 years ago. She was a new mom, recently out of a bad relationship with the father of her daughter, and my dad was recently widowed. They fell in love fast, and my dad became a dad to Callie, now 7 female. I, 17 female, have no problems with him moving on fast, but about 2 years in, they started having issues with me saying step. They told me it was going to give Callie complex and take from her having a nice perfect family. I told them I wasn't going to call Jane mom or refer to her as my mom, and they would have to deal with it. So Jane decided to flip the script. She would tell Callie that I chose them, that I chose Jane to be my new mommy, and Callie to be the sister I always wanted but never had. It's not at all true, but I'm not out here trying to crush little kids. Then recently, Jane's family decided to do this photo shoot of all the mothers and their children. I think it was something like they wanted to show the strength of mothers even during the toughest times, that is, lockdown and the state of everything with COVID. Jane asked me to pose with her and Callie, and I said no. Callie then asked why would it be in the photos if I chose Jane and her as mom and sister. Jane went into the whole thing again, and she did it in front of me, I think hoping I would agree and maybe had a reason, or make me cave into agreeing, why I wasn't going to be in them. But I said nothing. I let Jane be the parent, and afterward she was angry. My dad told me I should have agreed with Jane and reassured Callie that I loved and chose her and Jane, because that's all Callie knows. I told him I'm not going to lie about seeing Jane as a mom to me when I don't. I also said they're the ones who came up with the idea of me choosing them and they need to deal with that. They still think I was an a-hole for not saying anything. I think it's their job as parents. Yeah, I'm almost an adult, but that doesn't mean I'm responsible for parenting. I also think eventually Callie will figure out that I don't feel the way they say I do, and maybe she's even starting to figure it out. I can acknowledge the whole thing has been confusing for her and probably hurts because she's been given these expectations and they're really not true. And I feel bad for her because I know how badly the truth can hurt when you've been in the dark for a long time. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. This is really strange. There's nothing wrong with having a step-parent. She and your dad are being super weird about this. Also, 7 is way past old enough to be able to comprehend the idea of step-parents and have siblings. Parents shouldn't lie to their kids about the makeup of their own family. I understand that Callie's a stepsister actually. I still don't get the concept of Opie choosing them and why acknowledging that they're step-family is bad. Jane might have a complex about having a perfect family, and anything that reminds her that it isn't perfect could be a negative to her. My mom had some. A lot of. Guilt over not giving me and my brother a perfect or normal family when my parents divorced, so maybe this is something like that. Not they, Opie. They dug themselves into a hole with their story. You didn't choose to go along with it. Callie will figure it out soon, probably. Kids aren't as dumb as most people think. Not they, And what about you? You lost your mom and you were being used and lied about. Your stepmother is self-absorbed and delusional. Your feelings don't matter. You're being used to pamper her and her child. Good for you for following your conscience and being a real person. I hope you have people in your life that truly see you and care about your feelings and not just what you do for them. Find those people. And where is Callie's bio dad? Not involved? Not they. Families come in all forms. Creating this illusion that they are the perfect family isn't healthy for any of them. Not they. It's really sad that you can't tell your little sister that your mom died, and while Jane is your stepmom, you wouldn't want any other stepmom because she makes your dad and you happy, and that's all that matters. I feel sorry for your little sister who isn't getting the opportunity to understand a real situation. Children aren't stupid, and they deserve to understand the truth.